Hello and welcome to ADGM Think, where we explore what leaders across the financial market really think. My name is Gabrielle Inzirillo and I'm a financial regulator here at ADGM, Abu Dhabi Global Markets. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Peter Zemsky. Hi.
Hello.
The Eli Lilly Chaired Professor of Strategy and Innovation at INSEAD. Peter is not only a leading expert in strategy and innovation, having served as Deputy Dean and then Dean of Innovation at INSEAD for over a decade, but he's also very passionate about how emerging technologies, particularly AI, as it's very topical right now and it's quite important, are transforming the global business and education landscape. Peter, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here.
So, you recently moved to Abu Dhabi full-time. You've been coming in and out in the region before?
I used to travel in and out with INSEAD, but now have the pleasure to be based here full-time.
How long do you intend to be here? Is this a full-time relocation?
Well, yes, I have a mission contract for several years, but I noticed there are many people who come for a few years and are still here quite a bit later.
That is indeed a trend. Well, I look forward to bumping into you as we go across our days. So actually, let's get started. Let's start with really the big picture. So we want to talk a little bit about AI and how it's essentially redefining how businesses are thinking about operational roles. And also a little bit about how societies are thinking about the future of their skills and what's going to happen. As a financial regulator myself, we've been looking at, for instance, the legal basis on which we can allow the firms we regulate to actually utilize AI. How do these things hold up in a court of law, for instance? So I think my first question to you will be about a little bit of a strategic perspective. What are the key lessons that the rise of AI, it sounds very, megalomaniac, a little bit, the rise of AI, but how does that, what does it offer for both business leaders and policymakers? What kind of lessons can we take from?
Right. Well, at a very step back kind of level, I've been following AI for about a decade, right? So I teach about business value from technology. So I keep one eye on the new technologies that come out, but mostly focus on the applications. But still, it struck me how even deep experts in AI were surprised at how fast things moved. I'm talking about, 2015 up to 2020, and of course with generative AI. Really striking, and it really drives home how in today's landscape, it's very hard to have a crystal ball and really have a certainty about what's coming. I mean, if you just look at even some of the details, one of the things that drove AI so fast was they discovered that these gaming chips made by NVIDIA to do like realistic graphics turned out to be really good at training these AI models, suddenly speeded up. And no, I don't think anyone was anticipating that. But what's fascinating, again, from a business and a regulatory point of view, is when you get those shocks, how quickly do you understand them and react to them? So taking NVIDIA, obviously they did a great job, lucked into an amazing position, but then completely rethought their strategy to ride that wave in an extraordinary way.
Okay, so you're talking about adaptability, basically, and how policymakers and firms just need to be adaptable to things that they don't know will come. Do you think you could tell us a little bit more about how that can functionally be put into place? Because I know for our podcast, we have a lot of ADGM firms that listen to this, right? And it's difficult, expect the unexpected. How do you actually put that into place?
Okay, great. Again, advice will be a little bit different if I'm focusing on, firms versus regulators, but certainly if I focus on companies, organizations. Again, the classic thing we say when we teach is, test and learn and experiment. And two reactions here. On the one hand, a lot of this, especially this new wave of generative AI, it's really easy to experiment with, right? So you can stand things up, you can learn, and it's really much more about, in a thoughtful way, getting out there and trying things and reducing the uncertainty. Because remember, you're not trying to figure out, is AI good or bad overall? It's like, in my business, doing this part of payments, my function, is it going to work or not? And you've got to figure that out. That'd be one side. That's sort of the positive of test and learn. The flip side, though, and we saw this in the earlier set of AI, when organizations get really confused, sometimes they just try everything. Having 50 different proof of concepts it turns out, a recipe for failure. Because fundamentally, to get the value out, it's not just about having the application, it's driving it in a scaled way and getting people to adopt it. And if you don't have any commitment, people will not follow you. So you can't just do 50 different random experiments.
Okay, so I'm taking two takeaways. So tell me if this is correct. So first of all, it's about having a bit of rigor. So rigor in deciding the pilots you want to do and the choices you want to make amongst a plethora, I guess, an unfathomable amount of choices to choose one or two and just double down. And then secondly, it's about, I guess, not so much inspiring people to take this change on board, but I guess it's to enable them to be part of it in their own immediate roles.
Yes. Yes. On the positive side, on the negative side, there's a lot of fear and only growing negative emotions with a lot of people around AI. If you're going to overcome that, you need a certain level of focus to reassure people and push through some of that resistance.
In your research, have you seen anything about this sort of fear of change in technology, actually? This is a little bit off topic. I'm just wondering, because we're all human, we're all people, part of these societies.
So to be honest, I work more with companies on the content of their strategy, but boy, in my work in that area, the emotional level goes up and up. So I certainly run into that all the time. And I think also at this point, if you look back at digital before it, it's clear, if you're awake, that technology is a two-edged sword. It's done some great things, but I don't know, if you think about some of the negatives of social media, you can't argue that technology can't also be destructive. And so now I think for those of us who are trying to lead these changes, we have to take seriously the fears and concerns of people in society and in our organizations.
The good and the bad, always. Okay, let me steer it back on topic because I would deviate a little bit. Apologies. So obviously with AI, and you mentioned generative AI, we've had a number of models that have been developed. Like, for instance, here in the UAE, we have our Falcon LLM model, which we are very proud of.
Yes, and well, you should be.
Thank you. It's not like I've done anything particular, but as Abu Dhabi and as the UAE, we are very proud of this one. I want to ask a little bit about open source models. So like the Falcon LLM, how does this shift the competitive dynamics in the tech industry?
So it clearly has the potential to shift. I think it's still open. The battle between the open weight models like Falcon or Llama, and of course the closed models, which is Claude and OpenAI and Gemini from Google. But it's a very interesting competition. They're very different. They have different strengths and weaknesses. So clearly an open model where again, remember these models at the end of the day, once they're created, are just billions of weights, billions of parameters. So open weight means I'm going to tell you the weights, which now means I can take that model, I can run it on my own machines, really keep control of my data that feeds into it. I can also better alter it. So that's super positive. And certainly in today's environment, people may not want to be sending all of their data to cloud controlled by big tech companies like a Google or a Microsoft or OpenAI. So that's clearly a positive. I think some of without getting into the details, the geopolitical complexities we live in actually play to some of the strengths of that. However, right, it's not so simple, right? So there's two things. One is obviously when people like OpenAI contract directly with people, they get potentially more money. Mm-hmm. And of course, these are very expensive models to develop. But even so, right, data is everything. And if you think about if anyone's on like a ChatGPT, you'll see it. Oh, here are two responses. What do you prefer? Mm-hmm. So the fact that they have a direct connection with their users, they're running the model, means they're getting a lot more feedback, which lets them increase the performance of their model. So it's really it's a horse race between some very different horses.
Okay, very interesting. I'm obviously not going to ask you which one you back.
Oh, you can actually. So an interesting thing, what we're seeing is like sometimes one of the things we think about in tech is it going to be winner take all? Okay. Right? So sometimes with you think about like mobile, it's just Apple and Google with Android and iOS. So
keep in mind that as a regulator, we hate winner take all. We hate it.
So good news for you would be what we're seeing actually. If you step back, incredible fragmentation. Models are coexisting. And that's partly because they compete on many different dimensions. So if you get into, for those of your listeners who are using this, models vary in how fast they are, of course, how much they know, but also sometimes how challenging they are, how easy it is to alter them. And so you have many different dimensions. So different models can be chosen by different applications. We can actually get a fair amount of coexistence. So in that sense, there's clearly there's room for open source. At this point, still though, the bigger markets in terms of revenues are going to be in the closed models.
Interesting. Okay, so let me use that to jump to something else. Speaking about coexisting models, what about coexisting ecosystems? So you recently did move to the UAE, so you are a firm believer in the UAE, ecosystem developing, and it's true that we do have this fundamental ambition to be an AI hub. As we develop this, I'd just like to know a little bit in your view, what will be the most critical factors that are there in determining the UAE's long-term success in this space?
So a piece of it is the leadership commitment, just like I talked about at the firm level. It's also at an ecosystem or a country level, but it's going to be more than that. But just one anecdote on the leadership foresight, because as much as I said, it's hard to predict, it's still great to see when leaders make the right bet. So remember, where does Falcon come from? How is it that Abu Dhabi, the UAE, has a world-class model when even countries like India wouldn't? Okay, even before ChatGPT came out, they were already inside the Technology Innovation Institute, TII here, working on their models, doing this Arabic NOR model. And so when GPT hit, they actually had the competencies, because actually training a model in Arabic is quite hard for a set of reasons. They quickly pivoted, which is again, that reactive part, and they developed Falcon and had a real player. So that's the leadership side. But now that's not enough, as I said. Getting to your question, you need to build a whole ecosystem here. So part of it is clearly the hardware and the infrastructure. And you see the press reports all the time as they try and navigate some of the politics around the chips.
Also, let's be honest, just apart from the chips, just infrastructure and setting everything up, it's expensive.
Yes, it's so that in ways plays to some of their strengths, but then you also need the cloud capabilities, right? So it's not just having the chips, it's having that whole infrastructure, and really importantly, that the organizations here know cloud, right? So, it's one of those things when we were telling people 10 years ago, cloud's a big deal, that's a non-regret capability. If you underinvested in cloud, you're now hampered here. But then it's more than that. I think for the UAE to be a vibrant ecosystem, you also need it to be a hotbed of application. And so you really need startups, but also some of the bigger government and other institutions to adopt. And there, it's interesting to watch. That's also one of the things I try and be part of. Yes, senior leadership says we should do this. But in the middle, are people really feeling comfortable to take the risk on AI projects? Mm-hmm. I think that's an area where we still need to work everywhere to get that sort of middle of the organization to embrace and build that part of the ecosystem.
Well, I do think that at an operational level, having that comfort to be doing pilots, for instance, trying to, for instance, make your own work more efficient with AI, which is something that's heavily encouraged here. And I say this at the government level within Abu Dhabi, it's something that we are very much encouraged to do, to experiment with and see how we can use it.
Yep. So I think actually it's really interesting, this moment when ChatGPT comes out, or in China, they had the same phenomenon with like DeepSeek. People start to use it. It's really easy for individuals to pick it up, and that helps a lot. But there's a little bit of a trap there, because sometimes if you see it as an individual, what you think about is, oh, I've got my existing tasks, the existing things organizations are asking me to do, and I'm going to play with each one of those. And that's good, but the real transformation often comes when the organization rethinks the whole function, right? It's not just you and your individual thinking about, oh, I'm going to tweak this part of the regulatory evaluation. It's when you step back and you rethink the whole set of interactions. Or in a business context, you can completely rethink the way you do marketing in a much more integrated way using LLMs. And that's not just individuals, that actually takes, people at the top leading, say, your marketing function to feel comfortable enough to rethink their whole org.
That that is a big ask. It's a big ask. Let's be honest, it is a big ask, right? Yeah. Especially considering when we don't know how things are going to play out.
This is one of these classic big tech changes where you want to say it's overhyped, so there's going to be less change in the short run than people anticipate, because the technology's magic, but getting into organizations is slow and painful. But the technology is magic, and where we end up in 10 years will probably be more different than we can even imagine.
No, I'm very much behind you with that. Let's shift a little, since we were talking about strategy and the role that people play. Let's shift it back to the world of education and leadership, because at INSEAD you are training people to eventually be leaders, right? So I want to talk to you a little bit about how do you consider AI to be transforming the way we approach corporate training, for instance, and management education?
Yeah, great question. Very close to my heart.
I'm sure at INSEAD you've had to completely revamp your programs as well.
Right. So there's two things coming. We need to change what we teach, but also how we teach, right? So both of these are important. In this one, I think what we teach is important, and as functions get reinvented, we need to change what's in our core marketing and operations course. But at the same time, a lot of what leadership is about, change management, dealing with the emotions, these kind of things are still what we've been teaching. I find more challenging how we teach. So AI, especially this generative AI, is a knowledge engine, right? To predict the next word I'm about to say. Like if I say the top substitute in the automobile industry is, well, it can predict what I'm going to say because it knows about the auto industry and it knows about my concepts, substitutes, complements, buyer power. And so all that knowledge is right there. And how are we going to adapt our teaching to tap into that and use that to educate people? I think what's at stake here is, so there's a lot of people, it's troubling, using AI to make people obsolete, get them out of production. Our challenge is how can we use AI to make people more productive, to help them learn and adapt faster. So it's very motivating. But again, we're up against some tough players who are trying to make people obsolete.
Again, I'm going to go a little bit off topic, but I do say this because, for instance, regulatory work is an apprenticeship model type role. You learn through being a case officer, you learned seeing examples, you learn a little bit over the years all the different types of issues that I might have, right? And obviously these, in order to get to a more senior role, you have had to go through these years of being able to see risks and processes come forward.
Right.
At this point, we don't really see it as swapping it out just yet, but we do worry a little bit that some firms think that they can get rid of all of their younger staff. Do you see that?
Yes, this is a huge point of debate. I'm less familiar with your regulatory world, but for sure see this like in consulting, right? It's the same thing, apprentices model, right? So, and again, I think you'll realize there's, most senior roles, leadership, anything with judgment, you've probably worked your way up.
Right.
And the danger, I think, for human systems and humanity is if we just what you're saying, if we automate the baseline analysis, where do the future people come from? And it's super, super challenging. Again, I think organizations need to be thoughtful about that. But with every threat, there's opportunity. Certainly for us as educators, it could be interesting because now there's less learning on the job. How do we accelerate and build judgment in an educational program is one of our challenges.
Interesting. How do you build and create judgment? That's a whole different topic.
Yes.
Okay, let's bring it back to Abu Dhabi. So you're here, you're with INSEAD, you're here for the long term. INSEAD has been recently launching some exciting new initiatives at ADGM.
Yeah, happy to mention. So this will be officially launched later, but I can give you a little bit of a taster. So one of the things that's, whenever you should not start with the technology, start with the pain points. Just say this, one of the biggest pain points in human learning, in corporate education, is going from knowing to doing. I can show you a great video about how you should, not micromanage your people, but, lead as a coach. Or I can show you a great video about how you should move from selling a product to selling it as a solution. 24 hours later, you've usually forgot half of it. A week later, 80% of it, unless you use it.
Wow.
So one of our focus at INSEAD is how can we use AI to create situations, realistic conversations and other situations where as soon as people get content, they go from knowing to doing and reinforce the learning.
Isn't the statistic that you learn 70% by doing?
Yes. Yeah. So that's what you see. In fact, like our biggest substitute for us is, yes, you can come to our classroom and learn, or you can learn on the job. And one of the advantages of learning on the job is you do it right away. But again, with AI, like suppose I wanted to practice for this podcast, I could create a Gabrielle and I could have gone in and it would have tried to anticipate your questions and your reactions to me. And I could have maybe learned to do a better job on your podcast. Anyway, but that's coming not just for podcasts, of course, but even more so for, like, suppose you're rolling out new wellness conversations. Hundreds of frontline managers. Do you really want them to practice their first wellness conversations on your people? Or would you like them to go down that learning curve in a safer AI simulated environment?
I see. I think that's really interesting because it does allow people to get out their comfort zone in a sort of simulated, protected environment, which does somewhat, make it more comfortable.
Yeah, and even you can do it. I mean, again, there's some advantage to the technology. There's no other human sitting there judging you. For some people, that's quite important to have, as you said, a really safe individual place for learning at first.
Well, I think that's everything we've always wanted, right? A safe place to learn. So I'd just like to congratulate you. You've done a wonderful job with this podcast. You did not need a simulated Gabrielle. The real Gabrielle was very happy with you.
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you, Peter, for your time. I'd like to thank the audience for being here and listening to the ADGM Think podcast. Just to summarize a little bit of a few things you did say, which I thought were really quite interesting. Everything you learn by doing, fundamentally. AI will be able to help us do this. And finally, we need to not just grow technology to, take over and be better, but we also need to grow ecosystems that will utilize it in responsible manners.
Bingo.
Bingo.
Yeah, very nice, Gabrielle.
Thank you. Do you want to say thank you to our audience?
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here, and great to have the conversation. Look forward to being in Abu Dhabi for the years ahead and interacting with people. It's just a great ecosystem we're developing here.